Are some of your plants looking really spindly and sad? Are they really struggling? Are they looking a bit yellow? Is the lawn looking off colour? Is your fruit production not as good as you want it to be? Well, we're going to talk you through the benefits of fertilising all these areas, adding those nutrients that those plants need to green them up, to get them productive, to get them flowering. We're going to talk about what sort of fertilisers to use, how to use them, and when to use them. There's a great range of general purpose fertilizers that will feed your beds and borders, your fruit, your vegetables, your ornamentals, and they come as granular or powdered forms or indeed liquid forms as well. And I've got some examples here. We've got chicken manure pellets, we've got bone meal, or we've got bloodfish and bone. These granular types just need to be sprinkled over the top of the surface. They can be lightly hoed in or forked in, and they'll gradually break down. And as they break down, they'll add nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium to the soil. Some have trace elements as well. Nitrogen's really good for greening up plants. Phosphorus is really, really good for root production, and potassium is really good for flower production and fruit and vegetables. So these will help your plants generally around the garden, but you might want to use a liquid general fertilizer. And we've got one here in the form of seaweed extract. That one has the advantage of the fact it can be used as a foliar feed. So you can actually put this over the foliage of the plant and it will be absorbed through the leaves of the plant. So not just feeding through the roots, but through the foliage as well. And you don't have to hoe or dig that one in. So we've been talking about general fertilizers, things like chicken manure, for example, or bone meal, which will do the vast majority of plants. But sometimes you need something a bit more bespoke, a bit more specialized for a particular plant. And what I'm thinking of in particular is things like ericaceous plants, things like rhododendrons, azaleas and camellias. Sometimes they can grow in soils where the micronutrients they need are very, very difficult for them to extract. So they need that extra bit of help from you with a specialist feed to replace those micronutrients. And that comes in the form of something like an ericaceous feed. This is a liquid feed. It will get down to the roots of all those plants very, very quickly. You can use a foliar feed as well, so it can be absorbed through the foliage. And there's ones for citrus as well, because again, citrus plants are ericaceous. They like that acidic soil. So when you look at the back of these, for example, you'll see all the main elements like phosphorus, potassium and nitrogen, but sometimes you see things like manganese and things like copper and iron, for example, which are the trace elements. And these little micronutrients are really, really important for helping those plants. So although, the general feeds will kind of feed those kind of plants in a general way, if you need to particularly help them out, especially if the leaves on those kind of plants have turned yellow and develop what's called chlorosis, you need these more specialized kind of fertilizers to give them a boost, to give them a bit of a zip, and to get them back to having that really, really glossy foliage, being healthy and flowering really, really well. Another area in your garden that might need a more specialised fertiliser is your lawn areas. These need feeds that are very high in nitrogen because it greens up the grass, makes the grass really, really nice and strong. Some also contain trace elements like calcium or iron, for example, that do other things as well. But it's very important to use a fertiliser specific for your lawn. And they come in a solid form or a liquid form as well. There's two liquid forms here, for example, that you just dilute down, put in a watering can, and then you just literally go over the lawn and just water those into the lawn if you want to. Some can be attached to a hose pipe through a sprayer device and you can spray them over the lawns. And then there's a more solid form, like a granular form here. This is an organic form called hoof and horn, very high in nitrogen. You spread this out over your lawn and gradually over time, with the rain and the wind and everything else, it breaks down and it feeds the lawn. So there you go, various options for your lawn. But as I say, important to go for a bespoke lawn fertilizer because it will give your grass exactly what it needs to be green, to be healthy, to be resilient, to be drought tolerant, and to just be really gorgeous and green all the way through spring, through summer and into autumn. And also in autumn, you can buy bespoke autumn fertilizers for your lawn as well, which tend to feed the roots of the grass rather than the top part of the grass, strengthen it through the winter so it can get growing really, really quickly the following spring. And then you start the cycle over again of adding the nitrogen one to green up the top. We've talked all about the different types of fertilizers, but when and how do you apply them? Well, rule of thumb generally is you apply them to the plants when they're actively growing. So from mid to the end of March through to about the end of August. The liquid ones, as I said before, you can put into a watering can with a fine rose on the end and water them over the lawn or the beds or your plants or wherever. Sometimes you can get little dribble bars that you can put on the end of the watering can as well, or some you can put in a knapsack sprayer or a pressure sprayer and apply them that way. The granular ones, you just sprinkle over the ground, you hoe them in, lightly dig them in. You can water them in over a few days so they start to become activated. But whichever type you use, always read the instructions on the product. Never use more than what they say or more often than what they say. And if you just stick to those rules, you're going to keep all your plants looking really, really happy, whether it's your lawns, whether it's your hanging baskets, whether it's your beds and borders or your fruit or your vegetables or even indeed your house plants. Really, really is important to feed all those plants, look after them, keep them healthy, keep them happy, keep them productive, and just end up with an absolutely beautiful garden. If you want any of these brilliant products for your garden, I've added some links below on my website.